Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. So this is going to be part 3 of our diesel tug here by Lindberg, and it's only a skill level 2, so we're in good shape. So last video, we did our superstructure with all of our railings there, the handrails, and got it fitted to the model, so that's good. Now we need to work on our bridge and get that going, get these major things out of the way. But I think first we're going to fill these holes here that are locator holes for these awful ladders. So yeah, let's do that first. Let's get down to the bench here, get this thing going. We got a lot of little things to take care of, so let's do those. Now, for filling those holes in the deck, we're going to use this Tamiya putty. Yeah, it takes a while to dry. However, it does do a much better job, and it's a lot more durable. But since these holes are fairly deep, as our Tamiya putty dries, it's going to shrink. Now, that's the thing about putties. You put enough of it on there, yeah, it's going to shrink. So we're going to get that on there so we can set this aside and let that first application dry. So next up, we need to take a look here at our bridge. As you can see, we do have some flex there, which is going to be a problem when we go to fit it to the top of our superstructure. So I'm just going to deburr it across the top here, just make sure everything's nice and smooth so that we get a good fit with the roof that goes on top of our bridge here. So with that done, we can go ahead and stick our bridge on. And it's a good fit. Don't really have a problem with that. The only thing is it does want to kind of pull away in the center there. So we're going to clamp it down. Now, the clamps I'm using are the X-Acto 3-inch hobby clamps. And it's just a sliding clamp with a little sliding lock on it there. And they're not so strong that they bend things out of place. So we'll use those, and then we can go ahead and cement the roof section on. So I do give it about 20 minutes to set up. That way we're not popping it off while we're working with it. So we need to set it down here and see how it conforms to the roof section of our superstructure there, because we really want our bridge to not have a big seam right around the bottom there. That would be kind of ugly. So it seems to be that in the center section here, right where I'm standing right now, tends to have it pushed up just a little bit. And then also the center of the sides are just a little bit low. So we'll just have to touch those up a little bit, and then we can recheck our fit. Now, you guys know I like to test fit everything. So I'll clamp it on here in the back, and then we can just pull it together there towards the front and check and see where we're at. A little bit more adjusting, and it's going to be just fine. Of course, you know, you guys don't want to hang around and watch me sand plastic, so we're going to call that good for now. So next up, I think we're going to tackle our stack because it's probably going to need some filling and some sanding. So let's go ahead and put it together here, just a kind of a test fit. And got to be honest with you, those pins really are nice. It really locks it together. But you can see the ends are kind of rough, and those seams where the two halves come together are fairly rough too. So we'll have a little bit of fixing to do there. I just want to check and make sure that the relationship between all of our parts are good enough, and we don't need to do any major part modifications. So with that verified, we can go ahead and cement our two halves together. And it's just a simple matter of running some Tamiya extra thin right down the seam there. And we're going to have to let that set up a little bit because you can't do any sanding on it while the plastic is soft. So while that cures for us, we can start working here on our vent, which is these two halves. Now there are no alignment pins for these two halves, so you kind of eyeball this thing together. Now, one of the problems that we do have is that in the middle of them there, well, not in the middle, but inside, once we get this thing together, this is going to be visible, and we have a large ejector pin there. So we're just going to use our Tamiya router to knock it down, and then I'm going to have to switch out my bit for a smaller one. And these are just little grinding burrs. These are not the fluted type burrs. They're just I guess they're diamond. Really, really cheap and inexpensive. But the really small spherical size on this one allows me to get into those corners there and get that stuff cleaned up. Because once we get our vent together, this is going to be in a visible area, if I can say that right. So we just want to get it cleaned up. Now, once we get this all cleaned up, we can go ahead and assemble our halves. And like I say, it has no alignment pins, so we're just going to have to be careful that we get the left and right halves assembled and they're flush. Now, remarkably, they are nearly identical, or a nearly identical mirror image of one another. Does that make sense? In other words, the seams line up really good. So we're just going to cement this together, and we're going to need to let it dry before we continue on shaping it. As you can see there, it's a nice looking little piece. We got plenty of polystyrene there to work with. So back to our funnel. We can start working on it some. And it's dry enough now that we don't have to worry too much about either it coming apart or we have some loose, gummy type polystyrene sticking to our sanding sticks. That's never a good thing. So the first task is to flatten the top of it there, because we have a cap that needs to go on our funnel. And we need to just check that out, make whatever adjustments are necessary. We also need to check this fit here where it sits on the deck. Don't want any big gaps there. And we'll get that sanded nicely. And the next task to take care of is our seam. So we already know that the funnel fits nicely. However, we do have a seam there. And there's also some sink marks where the alignment pin bolsters are on the inside there. So I'm just using a 400 grain sanding stick here, and I'm just sanding it off smooth. And it's going to reveal, because this is a really shiny white polystyrene plastic, it's going to reveal any voids where it's got those sink marks, as you can see, and also along that seam that are going to have to be filled and taken care of. So to do that, what I'm going to use for filler is going to be some medium CA glue. Now, this is the first time I've actually ever used CA glue as a filler. I just feel that it's probably hard. It's probably harder than the polystyrene, which can make it a little difficult to sand down. But in this particular case, if we was to use our PPP, that Perfect Plastic Putty, which is water-based, and maybe the Tamiya, I don't know, the Tamiya would probably be okay. It might flake off, and we don't have to worry about that. So we are going to use our accelerator there. I'm going to move it away from the bench to spray that. we don't want to be spraying our little wax candle there that's got our CA glue in it. And yeah, do use this stuff in a well-ventilated area because it is strong. Very strong smelling, I should say. And true to the labeling there, it does dry it instantly. So I think we can go ahead and actually get to work on it right away. And back to our 400 grain sanding stick here. We're just going to kind of smooth this out and see what kind of little voids are going to be left, because I have no doubt that there is as bad of a job as I did putting that CA glue on there. We're going to have some voids. So let's smooth it out. And of course the sanding stick is going to roughen up the surface of that CA glue, but wherever the sanding stick didn't touch it, it's going to be shiny. And that'll give us another indicator there of the little divots and stuff that needs further work. And you can see them right there. I hope you can see them. There are little bitty spots and stuff, which really doesn't call for us to put more CA glue on it. So we're just going to use Mr. Surfacer 500. That's going to take care of all those little bitty inconsistencies that we've got going on there. Now, why am I spending so much time on this seam? Well, you know, the funnel on a tugboat is like a major feature for a tugboat. As a matter of fact, it's a major feature for any vessel. So by making sure that we've got a nice, clean look to it there, I think it's going to really enhance the overall look of our tugboat here. And it is an older kit, so it needs a little bit more love. So we're going to have to set this aside and let this dry. Now, for cleaning our brush, Mr. Surfacer 500 or the 1000, I always use that Mr. Leveling Thinner to clean that. It's very aggressive, and it'll clean your brush. So back to our vent. So the two sides on the inside here is not quite flush lined up. And like I say, we're going to be able to see that, especially that bottom edge right there where I'm working on it. That's going to be very visible. So we need to just make sure that that's taken care of. And we've got a nice smooth transition around the inside of the horn there. And then we're going to flat sand the face of it. Very easy to do. I know it looks like I'm really going aggressively, but it's not that aggressive. And we do need to check the curvature of it and make sure that, you know, everything's meeting and it's nice and smooth. And there is kind of a flat spot because that one mold is a little bit different than the opposite side. So we just got to make sure that we get that curvature in there. And then, of course, just take care of the seam. A little bit of sanding and polishing on that. And it's going to look really good. And the good thing about these really old kits is they have plenty of polystyrene in them. So don't be afraid to sand this stuff. So that looks good. All right, when it comes to sanding, especially on finished work, I use these flexible sanding sticks here, and multiple different grains or grit counts, you know. The coarse ones, of course. Yeah, well, like this one. That's going to remove more material a lot faster. And then you can just progress through the different grits, you know, from, say, a 400 to a 600, a 600 to an 8. And the higher the number, the smoother the finish. And it'll give you a really good finish on whatever area that you're sanding. And here, we're just working over our Mr. Surfacer 500 that we are using as a filler. And by the time we get it polished down, it should be nice and smooth. So we're also going to clean up this bottom edge here, because where the top of our funnel come out of the mold, it's got a little lip on it there, and we just want to clean that up because it's kind of supposed to be just a little bit more rounded than it actually looks like in the raw part. So we'll polish that down, and that should give us a nice look. So with that done, let's go ahead and install the cap on our funnel. And that's a nice, neat seam. So we're just going to cement it into place. It looks good, and we don't need to do anything else to that. So let's go ahead and take a look at how all this is going to look when it's kind of assembled and put together here. So I'm kind of happy with our seams there, and also our vent. That looks good. So we will put it on its adjoining part. Now this is that upper deck section that goes behind the bridge of our tugboat. And yeah, that's kind of looking really good. So, all right, let's move on. So on the roof of the bridge, we do have a couple of items that we need to take care of. One is going to be the horn. So this is the tugboat's horn. Now I did go ahead and experiment here with one of those horns, because as you can see, the other two, they really don't look like horns at all. So we're going to try to make that look like a horn. And of course, our spotlight, yeah, that looks terrible. We're going to have to fix that too. So we'll start with the horn section here. So from the underside where it's flat from their molding process, which you have to take into account that this is a very old kit. These horns should be kind of round, so actually they should be more bell-shaped, like a trumpet, but we're going to do the best we can with it here. And I'm just shaving off those sharp corners there, trimming them down to make it more like the horn that we would expect to see on the top of our tugboat there. And then just using the edge of our craft knife here, just scraping it down, kind of smoothing it out for us there. And being very careful to try to maintain as much of that little rim around the end of it as much as possible there. Now, since these three are so close, it's a little difficult to do that, but yeah, you can do it. So I do have this pointed sanding stick, which really comes in handy here to get in there and kind of smooth out all those scrape marks and everything from us shaping these horns into a more rounded shape there. So the ends of them here, as you can see, is more like a horseshoe, which it should be actually round. So we're going to come in with our sanding stick here and be a little careful, or as careful as we can, because they are rather close together. So the smaller the sanding stick you've got, the better result you're going to get. And this is a soft sponge-back type sanding stick, so we don't have to worry about a flat spot, but we do want to try to sand it down as round as we can get it. Now, once we get them fairly round, yes, they're not perfect, I know, but we want to locate that center of them, because one of the details of a horn is that it actually has a hole in the middle of it, which is something that we're going to want to reproduce here. So using our craft knife, we're going to find our center as close as we can and put us a little divot there. That way we can start a drill bit. I'm not sure what size this is. This might be a 0.7, but we are going to start that hole right where we put our little divot with our craft knife, and this will give us a guide for centering up the rest of the drill bits that we're going to use to enlarge the hole. So you can actually push this drill bit off to the left or right a little bit, and angle it to get in the middle if we didn't get it with the craft knife right in the middle. And here we're moving up in a larger size here. And we're just going to open up that hole a little bit more. And we're going to make sure that we get the other horn as well that we haven't done yet. And then we can move up to our final size that we've selected for it there. It might be a 1 millimeter or a 1.1, but yeah, we're just opening it up and being very careful. The point here is that in order to be successful with this type of operation, you want to start off with a small bit, make sure you got your center, and then just progressively get larger. That way you don't break out the side of the plastic piece. As you can see there, we kind of got our holes in. So next up, I do want to round off that large center bulbous piece there because in the 1940s and 1950s, there was technically, I would say, not that many sharp edges, sign of the times. So to kind of help it blend into the rest of the model, we'll just take that real sharp edge off of it there. Now when it comes to our spotlight, as you can see from the molding there, it's, yeah, see that right there? Not a really good smooth surface, and we really need as flat and smooth of a surface as we can get before we start modifying this piece. And I guess you could always paint this in, but we're going to actually drill it out. So we sand it off, and it's got a little sink mark in the middle there, which I'm going to have to kind of angle my drill bit over to get it in the middle, or as close to the middle as my crooked eye can get there. So, and we'll do that. And that's not too bad. We're fairly close to the middle there. So next up, we're going to have to switch over to some larger drill bits. And this is a selection of numbered bits. And I just want to pick out one that is going to help us open up the center. And then we're going to move up a couple of more steps here. And that should be good for our intermediate step there. I'm not sure what the drill bit size is. Just kind of go by eye. That's what I'm doing here. And then for my final. So I've selected my bits. And we'll start with the smallest one, using that pilot hole, which we centered up. And as you can tell, I am not using any kind of a device other than my hands. I feel if you're using a drill of some kind, you're going to get carried away and bad things will happen. So nice and slow wins the race here. So with that done, we'll move up to our next size, and we're going to open this hole up even more. And we're just kind of progressing through the sizes here. And as you can see, with that intermediate, I did leave a shoulder. So I drilled it deep enough that there is a nice shoulder there around the inside of that ring, which is going to be the ring that holds our lens in for our spotlight. And now we're just going to open it up for the final size. And we do need to be very careful here. And you can probably open it up a little bit more. I'm going to stop right there because I don't want that polystyrene plastic to break out from the edge there. Because if it did, we'd have something to fix, so we don't want to do that. So whenever you use a drill bit, of course, it's going to pull the material up to the surface, which leaves a little ring. So we sand that off and then come back in with our hobby knife there. And we can just kind of bevel it just a little bit, make sure everything's cleaned up nice. So that looks really good. So the whole point here is that we'll have something to take paint, and then we can lay in some sort of lens on that to make that look better. So let's go ahead and stick our horn and our spotlight onto the roof of our bridge, just to kind of get a look at what we've got done there. So that looks pretty good. I think it's going to really set it off. You know, it's the little details that really helps on a model. So we're going to move on to the next thing, and that's going to be these vertical posts here. The instructions call them quarter bills, but I think it's a misspelling because it's supposed to be bits from my little research here. I'm trying to get my naval terms correct. One of the problems we have here, though, as you can see, they don't go all the way down to the actual deck. So there's a rather large gap there, and there shouldn't be. So I'm just going to take and measure them and see where we're at. It's about 1.5 mils there, and then when we get back aft, they are about a 2 or a 2.5.
mil from reaching the actual deck. So what I'm going to do, I've got my little miter box here, and I'm just going to mark it out with a 2 mil and a 3 mil mark here, so that I know how far to cut off a spacer that we actually need to go underneath each one of those bits. So the 2 mil ones, as you can see, I got my line there. And this is just a piece of polystyrene sprue that come out of the kit. And it's slightly larger than the actual part that we're going to graft it onto. I sound like a doctor there, grafting stuff. But we're going to cement these extensions on. So that's what we're making. So I'm just going to use my razor saw here in my little miter box there. And that's the small one. So that should be about 2 millimeters. So I've given myself a little extra room there because we are going to have to sand these down to fit. So we need 4 of the small ones and 4 of the large ones, and this is the large one that we're putting on. It's about 3 mils long. And I'm just using to me extra thin here to cement it to the end of our bits here. And if I can get it straight. It always helps if it's straight. So, now, once we get it on, we can and let that cement set up for us so we're not knocking them off. We can go ahead and start sanding them down and get that profile down to the diameter of the original part. As you can see here, I am going a little aggressive with it with about a 180 sanding stick, but we'll use a finer stick later on. So there is a gap, so I'm going to use the CA glue here to kind of fill that gap a little bit. And that's because when they cast these parts, they did have a slight taper on them. And of course, that's not going to look too good. And in all the photographs that I've seen, they're pretty much just a straight piece of metal that goes down. So using the CA glue as a filler, I'm going to use this accelerator to help move us along. That way that CA glue sets up pretty quick. And then we can go ahead and sand that CA glue down. Now once we do that, we can start fitting our bits to each of those brackets. So I have to remove a little bit, of course, because we kind of want it to sit flush onto the deck. But there's a shoulder that we don't want to go past because otherwise it'll leave a gap at the deck, and we don't want to do that. So the shoulder that I'm talking about is this bottom ring right here, and that rests right on that bracket that's on the top rail of our bulwarks. So we'll just go ahead and sand these and fit each and every one of them. And so there are 4 forward, and then there are 4 aft that we need to take care of. So these are the shorter ones, and we'll take care of all of those. Now, once we get them fit, as you can see, that shoulder should set down right there on that bracket, and it pays us to leave just a little bit of fudge room there for later on.
Okay, so I have taken and put our bridge, our bridge right here. It's just test fitted onto the top of our superstructure here, and of course we've got our funnel and our vent, which doesn't want to stand up for us, but that's okay. Once it's cemented into place, we'll be in good shape there. And we fixed our spotlight and our horns. We modified those. So we still got some work to do in there. So none of this right here is cemented into place. Of course, we still got to put our binnacle and our the ship's wheel in to our bridge, and then of course this roof section here, we haven't cemented that on yet because that's going to be painted separately. So keeping everything in sub-assemblies kind of helps minimize the masking as much as possible. And also we did work on our bits. And that's all of these right here. Now they're not cemented into place either because they're going to be painted a different color. And yeah, I need to figure out a way because they're kind of fitted for each little bracket that goes around the top rail there of our bulwarks. So I'll figure that out later. So yeah, well, we've got a lot of work done. We still have a lot to do, so try to make our tugboat look as best as it can. So yeah, so special thanks to all my subscribers. Because of you guys, I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you're new to the channel and not a subscriber, I hope today I earned your subscription. So we still have a lot of work to do. We got railings and ladders and preparations for rigging and stuff like that. So I hope to see you guys next Friday. So till then, stay safe.